Marc Ostryniec, Global SVP Sales at one of our big sponsors, BigCommerce.
All right, well, thanks for having me here. So the title of my topic is Contemporary Commerce, and there's going to be some irony in that because we're going to talk probably more about history than we are going to talk about current or the future. But yesterday was Veterans Day, and so you're going to get a flavor of this also that incorporates some history for our veterans. Do we have any veterans here in our audience today? Statistically, we should probably have about 10. And so if we do, I want to say thank you because I value the service that our veterans have done, and I would bet that we all do. And so my topic starts with September 28th of 1901. This is a gentleman by the name of King Gillette. Okay, first name King, was not actually a king. And in 1901, King Gillette was an entrepreneur, 46 years old, and he sought to do something that no one else had successfully yet done. He wanted to build a simple, disposable shaving razor, okay? And if you contrast to the technology at the time, it was otherwise a straight razor. You have to leather it before every shave. The odds of getting cut, very, very high. It's not simple. It's not something that every man can use or every person can use. And it doesn't solve the basic problem, right, of something simple, disposable, and cheap for every person that has this challenge, right, of the need to shave. And so King Gillette invented this, built a patent for it, and it looks shockingly similar to the same razors we use today. And so as King Gillette went to market with this product, it wasn't cheap to manufacture. It didn't have instant demand, but something happened. And so in World War I, the US government bought 3.5 million units from Gillette Razor Company, right? And another 36 million disposable blades, so that every single serviceman had a Gillette razor in this khaki set, right? There was a khaki set for servicemen. There was a silver set that you could buy as a gift for friends and family, and that this started to change this entire industry, right? In terms of reshaping how many people could use or could access this product, and so here's a doughboy, right, in World War I, having a shave on the battlefield with a Gillette razor, right, because it was standard issue, because it was inexpensive, and because he wasn't going to cut himself, right, on the battlefield where you didn't need an accidental injury. And so keep rolling that forward. World War II. Here's a serviceman right before the Battle of the Bulge. And anyone who's interested in history, I love history. I think there's fascinating topics in there. But this is before the Battle of the Bulge. If you know what the Battle of the Bulge was, it was the second most deadly for Americans battle in all of American history. We had over 600,000 troops involved, 80,000 plus casualties, 19,000 dead, right, in that battle. Huge pivotal moment in World War II, right? This was the last main offensive from Hitler's German army pushing into Bastogne, right? Kind of the last throw for Hitler's army. And here's this serviceman day before having a shave, right, with a Gillette razor. And that was part of what the opportunity was for this brand. So Gillette not only was standard issue razor, World War I, World War II, but the razors had been innovated into a device that was snuck into POW camps. And so this same blue razor, right, in that packet, it has an arrow by which you put it in, right, directionally into the handle set for the razor itself. Well, they had magnetized the edge of the razor. And so if you held that razor from a piece of cotton or a piece of string, you had a compass. That arrow always pointed true north. And so if you were a POW and you could escape and you had gotten one of these packs of razors that had been smuggled in, you had a true north compass no matter what you had with you. It's a really interesting history, right? They had changed the way that this product was even used. The notion of it being a disposable razor blade that went into a handle changed in many cases, the outcome for individual servicemen and women in World War II, and it paints this picture of that product being useful beyond its intended use. So what happened in 110 years later, right? Anyone who this is, right? This is Michael Dubin, right? You've seen his commercials. You've heard about the exit with Unilever, right? Over $1 billion paid for Dollar Shave Club. And so in 110 years later, Michael Dubin set out to do the exact same thing. Make a low-cost, disposable shaving product for every person. And make it easy to get, right? And focus on the innovation of delivery as opposed to the core innovation of the product, right? Even in the viral video, it isn't that the blades are really any different. No, they're just great. But it's the same style, same blade, made in the same type of factory that every other person's blade is made. And so what was unique was the mechanism, right? The ability to get it in front of millions and millions of people. In King Gillette's case, that was World War I, right? Unique event. In Michael Dubin's case, it was the ability to launch a product and a program with very little spend, with enormous amounts of reach, and a similar outcome, meaning millions and millions of product sold. And the kit looks shockingly similar, right? To be honest with you, I actually brought one with me of the World War I original khaki sets. I actually have one. So if you want to see the original, it actually looks a lot better than the one that you get shipped in the cardboard box, right? 110 years later. So this is the page, right? If you go to Dollar Shave Club, you can go there now, whatever. This is the landing page, right? For a product that's really, really simple, okay? What does it cost to start? $5, right? What's the name of the company? Dollar Shave Club, right? So what's it going to cost you, right, for a refill razor? About $1. Do you know what it cost for the first razor handle set and first trial blade in 1903 when King Gillette finally launched the commercial version of the razor he filed the patent on? Know how much? $5 in 1901. You know how much the replacement set of razors, right? 20-pack of razors was? $1, right? 110 years different. The exact same business model at the exact same price for both the handle and the razor. That's amazing. Now, that should tell you that King Gillette probably didn't sell a lot of razors at $5 in 1903 because dollar cost equivalent, that's about $140, right, in today's dollars. But it's really interesting, right? It's the same exact business model, just brought to life using a modern version of technology, right? But the product is shockingly similar. And so I love the analogy and the stories that sit behind these because they tell us a lot about what the future is. And so this is the 2019 version, right, of Gillette's marketing and merchandising. So the legacy of King Gillette, they're the largest razor company in the world. They do a direct business and obviously a business through major retail. But if you look at Gillette as a business inside of Procter & Gamble, this is a $1 billion brand, right? One of the largest brands P&G runs. Extremely competitive industry, but they are the dominant brand. Do you know where this website started? This is what P&G calls test and learn. So this started as an idea, right? Team of 4 stood up a website, tested a business model of could they go and compete with the viral video version of the direct-to-consumer version of a flagship P&G product. And they had to learn a lot, right? P&G is not a direct-to-consumer marketing company, right? They're a direct-to-consumer marketing company. They're not a direct-to-consumer fulfillment and e-commerce company. And so the change that a company their size has to undergo in order to be a successful merchant is massive. But it starts with something really small. Right? It starts with a startup team taking a product, testing the marketing, and then starting to invest in order to grow that into a successful business that's doing tens, if not now hundreds of millions of dollars a year online. And so my supposition is that contemporary commerce is entrepreneurial, that spirit of entrepreneurialism that founded these businesses to begin with, right? Many of you work for product companies where there's a reason your product works the way it does, right? There was a founding idea, a principle, an innovation that started that. But that same method of starting small, iterating, and continuing is something really, really powerful. And so this is Shuhei. Anyone? I spent a year when I was a kid in Japan, and still fascinated by Japanese culture and everything that comes with it. And so Shuhei is a principle that comes from Japanese martial arts. Okay, and the concept is really, really basic. It's that the three characters that you see, right? The shu is when you're starting out, the most important thing you can do is do the actions correctly, right? So it's all about form and function, right? So if you can do the actions correctly, you'll learn them, right? You see the method of that in the Karate Kid, right? The wax on, wax off, right? That whole notion is shu, is that if you can be disciplined enough to do the basics right, you can start to learn your craft. Then you get into the ha, right? The ha is, as you've now built your base, you can now make small changes, right? Small innovations, small derivatives of what you started with, right? So you can try new things. And then the re is then once you've mastered your craft, you can now disrupt things, right? You can change the way that the actions flow and the actions perform. And in martial arts, that's really important, right? Because you become a thinking person, not robotic. And so what the heck does that have to do with modern commerce? Well, I think something really important, right? We all think and hear about minimum viable products and agile, right? I believe it's the same exact thing, right? Is that we have to be disciplined enough to do the basics right. So to Karthik's point, we have to be looking at data, right? We have to be good at thinking about and or interacting with our customers. So we have to be able to operate the basics. And then we get into the ha, which is we're looking for incremental ways to innovate, right? I want a slightly better conversion rate, right? Or I want to be able to lift the efficiency from spend that I'm getting from digital search. But where it gets really interesting is if I have those things working, now I can focus on disruption. So what is a disruptive change in my market, in my business? Is it a different product? Is it a different marketing tactic? Is it a different way of fulfillment that will actually shift and change the outcome? And that's exactly that disruptive process that we focus on with MVPs and with Agile, is to be constantly iterating, but with the purpose of disruptive change and not being satisfied with the status quo. So let's take our Shuhei to a topic that we likely all think about and care about, right? So customer experience, I don't think there's any secret. Everybody believes it affects the outcome, right? Statistically, you'll buy more, you'll buy from companies you have a great experience with. I believe all of that's true, right? I don't think any of that's new. I just think it's all true, right? So let me tell you a personal story. So my wife and I like to cook a lot, right? And now is the time of year where I try and listen for things that are good Christmas gifts. Right? They don't have to be extravagant, right? But good Christmas gifts. And so my wife mentioned to me, she's like, hey, I want like a salt container that I can have by the stove, right? So that, as you're cooking, you can just throw salt in a pot, right, of water or use with you. And I'm like, great, note to self, right? Buy salt container that goes by the stove, right? So I went on to Google and I put in counter salt dispenser, right? And I learned really quickly that it's called a salt cellar, right? The interesting one's called a salt cellar. That sounds cool, right? I love that idea, right? It's way cooler than just a salt dispenser. And so look for a salt cellar, right? And first result, crate and barrel. I like the imagery. We're building a house, love French marble, love French limestone. Like there's some really cool things. So great. French marble, salt cellar, like now we're on to something. Like that's good. That's a guaranteed hit, right? And this is the screenshot from my MacBook Pro, probably similar to what you guys have, right? 13-inch MacBook Pro. Is that awesome merchandising? No offense if you work at Crate and Barrel. It's a great company, totally great. But the thing that I'm after is that darn thing below the fold, right? I want the experience, right? I want that to be awesome. I want to see it. I want to buy it. So for $14.95, I can buy a really highly rated product that I'm going to have to scroll to see. That's great. Honestly, like that's the product I want, right? Totally in my lane, right size, right format, everything's great. But I don't have an account at Crate and Barrel, right? So then what happens? Well, I go here, right? And I went here, and all I typed in was Marble SA. You know what it gave me? Marble Salt Cellar, right? Number one, right? First result, right? That's a great experience, right? It knew exactly where I wanted to go. And there's my result, a little higher above the fold, right? Obviously, sponsors win the argument in terms of who gets stacked first, but a little bit on merchandising. But the result is that, hey, here's a product page. I can almost see the whole product. Similar thing, super highly rated. In fact, it's the exact same thing, right? It's the same thing, right? But it costs $5 more, right? Actually $6, right? It was $14.95. This is $20.99. Do you know which one I bought? I bought this one, right? Is it because I like wasting $6? Nope. It was so darn easy, and the experience was seamless. And so I don't want to beat that to death, right? But this matters, right? So I landed on the right product. It's highly reviewed, right? The merchandising's okay, and I didn't convert because it wasn't a great experience. This is dead easy. I'm gonna have it tomorrow, right? Actually, I already have it. And so that's not just about small incremental things. So I race bikes. Like, I love riding bikes. Bikes are a big part of my life. Love cycling. I didn't win this race, so whatever. But I love bikes. Okay, and I share that joy and love with my kids. And so my son has, for a 10-year-old, a killer bike. Right? It's awesome. Like, we built it together, all these great parts. It's totally overkill for what a 10-year-old should have. And rides his bike to school every day. Like, it's great. The problem is it got stolen, okay, from the elementary school bike rack. And if you can't tell, like, I'm still pissed off about this, okay? Seriously. And so not only did we lose the bike, but he clips his helmet on the bike when he leaves it at the school, locked up, right? And that's gone too. And so if you found that bike, call me. But for today's topic, I did the exact same thing. Okay, so I race for a team in Austin called Austin Tricyclist. This is my local shop. There is only one in Austin, right? It is a hyper local business, super friendly. They sell the bike I ride. It's my mechanics. Like, I love everything about that shop, right? It's funky, right? It's not, it has its own quirks, but it's great. And so I not only need a bike, but I at least need a helmet in the short term, right? So he can ride a bike to school. I know exactly which helmet I want. It's great. But I don't really have the time to get down there unless I really need something done on my bike, right? And so what do I do again? I went to Amazon, bought the darn helmet, right? And because I could get it by Wednesday, I don't have to drive there. And I could have saved 40%, right? So that notion, right, of price elasticity and customer experience, my view, and again, I'm sample size of one, it's way bigger than you think, right, in terms of the price elasticity. Like, I was so price inelastic that I would give up 40% on a product like this at a shop I like with people that are my friends, simply be able to have it by Wednesday, right? That changes the way you think about it, right? It changes the way you think about marketing and merchandising, is that to have that experience with your customer, it really does matter, right? And so a couple other frames to show you. So I'm also a merchant, right? So I work for BigCommerce, but I also make and sell my own product. And so this is my Seller Central from Amazon, okay? Full disclosure, Amazon didn't tell me to do it. I took a screenshot of my Seller Central. And so as I sell my products online, for my $13.51 fully loaded FBA fee, right? That includes shipping and tax. So for my $13.50, I get to not know my customer. So the whole other side of this, right? I'm showing all the glory of Amazon, but as a merchant, I'm not really in love with this, right? Because it costs me a bunch of money. I'm paying to promote my product in Amazon. I'm paying Amazon a bunch of money. I'm using FBA, right? That's a lot, right? I'm giving up a lot in that process. And I don't know if any of you all sell on Amazon, but even when I dig into an order, right, it's not my customer. It's my order, maybe, right? But it's not my customer. And in fact, they're going to make that abundantly clear. I don't know if you can see that at the very top, but in order to further protect the customers, I can't even see their name, right? So the experience is so awesome that I don't get to see them as a merchant. And that pains me, right? Because as a merchant, what I'm really hoping to do is build a customer base, right? And this is an important channel for me. It's not the only channel for me, but really what I want is repeat customers, and I want to sell them other products, right? I really want to build a long-term experience with them. I'm intentionally building and selling a really high-quality version of a product, right? And so I want them to want the next one that comes out, or I want them to buy or repurchase again. And this is a hard reality, right, of the difference between the channel. And so what do we do about it, right? So part of it is bringing forward the experiences that affect consumer behavior, right? Things that people either expect and or need. So the resonance of top-rated products, right? The merchandising of the experience of others in a shopping experience. None of these are surprises, but they're really important, right? And they're important to do well, because that ability to recommend or influence or affect my behavior is right there. Like the opportunity to affect what I buy is right there, right? I'm going to either search or I'm going to look, but really what I'm trying to do is get to a great product. Same thing with ancillary recommendations, right? I genuinely look at what recommended products are for me, right? All the better if they're relevant, but this stuff actually works, right? And so if you're spending time here, I would say, right call, right? Continue to spend time here, because there's an unbound depth in terms of what you can do in terms of being successful in recommending and helping a customer experience your product and or products around it. And that while Amazon has a lot of power, reach, volume, kind of fill in the blank, it doesn't have the tie-in to proximity. So let's think back to that example, right? I didn't buy a really expensive bike helmet from my local shop who sells that exact same helmet, right? You want to know the real reason I didn't buy it? I didn't know if they had it. Like if I knew they had it, I'd probably buy it. But I have to call, and then I'm kind of a jerk if I call and don't buy it, right? Because I just asked you about it, and like, yeah, we can order it, and we'll get it in a week or two, right? I didn't want to deal with that, right? But if you could bring that forward, change my experience, right? Give me the answer to the question I'm really asking, which is, hey, I want the product, love to buy from you, but I need to know whether it's there. And so that ability to do in-store and/or location-based availability is just as important as being able to do the time to deliver and/or advanced or fast shipping. And so we have friends from both here. I won't steer the thunder about their product, but I think they've done something really, really cool, because I like things that take a product or process that is already well established and long-standing and break it. Right? And so the ability to do checkout and just delete billing address, right? We're just not going to ask for it, right? Like everybody just assumes you need it, right? It's part of the natural path. You have to get shipping address and billing address and payment information. Just delete it. Don't want it. Don't need it. CVN, I don't know, right? That number's not useful to me as a consumer. Delete it, right? Maybe I could just check out with like my name, my ship to, 16 or 15 digit PAN. That'd be better, right? You start to get into and rival the experience and convenience that happens in a Amazon or an existing base checkout, but doing it on a large scale merchant site. So I think there's some really interesting things there in terms of changing the way that consumer expectation and behavior versus what's actually necessary to complete the task. So what does that have to do with Tastykake? Okay, nothing in terms of checkout, right? but something that I do believe is actually interesting and important. And so Tasty Cake was invented by a gentleman named Alexander Taggart in 1921. And in 1921, there was plenty of baking and bakeries and baked goods, but no one was doing commercial confectionery product like that. It didn't exist, right? The commercial cupcake that we might take as standard didn't exist. And so Taggart invented the ability to do, or mastered an ability to do mass manufacturing of a cupcake with basic icing on it. Okay, super popular, did really, really well. But it wasn't just about the baking innovation that the Taggart Baking Company, which was later acquired, had really focused on. Part of it was in how the product was marketed. And so when they built their baking facility, they powder coated all of the machinery white. So imagine this immaculate white bakery that's making these tasty cakes, right? And they had an icing room that had conveyors that held cakes upside down and dipped them in icing, right? It's stuff out of like Willy Wonka, right? But they wanted people to have this experience that there was really interest and intrigue and value in that product. Like it was something you couldn't make yourself, right? You don't have a baking line like that, right? You don't have rows of white ovens. You don't have an icing room with people in white, what look like lab coats, right? Icing cakes. You don't have that, right? And all of that is the precursor to Wonder Bread and some of the other Hostess brands that become hallmarks of kind of Americana and American culture. And so again, but what does that really have to do with us? And so the picture of Tasty Cake is that in World War II, they rationed really important ingredients for this: flour and sugar. That's almost 100% of this product. Add a little oil, maybe an egg, right? So flour and sugar. And so coming out of World War II, the company did survive, but it was severely restricted in terms of its growth and its ability to expand. And so coming out of World War II, they were looking and continuing to find ways to innovate, to market that product, and to find a way to put it in front of consumers in ways that were differentiated, right? Instead of full-page ad, what could you do instead to bring the product to where people actually were? And so in the 1960s and 70s, Hostess started making full-page, in comic books, storylines that wrapped around their product, right? So they brought the product into where their customer actually was. So you had kids reading comic books, right? Great. They're going to insert a full-page ad with the characters that involve a hosted cupcake. Now, that might be corny, right? The storylines aren't grand, right? They're pretty simple. But the point was to bring the product, bring the merchandising out into where their consumer, where they believed their consumer actually was. And I think that is very similar to what a lot of us spend our time right now focused on, which is Instagram, right? So the comic book in the 60s and 70s was something that people talked about, they shared the stories, and that if we can bring that merchandising and that product experience out to where people really are, and in a place where they spend time, right? Part of the reason people spend time on Instagram because it's so darn easy, right? It's entertaining, and that instead of trying to bring them out of that experience, we can actually use it to do direct merchandising and product inserts within. And so I think a lot of these parallels look like things that, again, are not new, but are really, really interesting ways to keep thinking about our customer and our merchandising experience in ways that are innovative. So I believe contemporary commerce is also experience-driven, right? So those experiences matter. It affects what people do. I can guarantee you it affects what I do. Again, data point of one, but I'll bet you would watch your customers behave in similar ways in terms of how they actually buy and think about products. And so the last piece of my talk is on another category that I believe is relevant for modern day and contemporary commerce. And that has to do with the purpose around the brand and the company that we're bringing to market. There's a lot of this, right, in terms of how people look at launching products, tying them to philanthropy, tithing the business with a certain amount of gross profit that they might dividend or net profit that they may provide to a charitable organization. That's great. And I think that as you think about that as part of your product, so as an example, the product that I make, we do all of our cut and sew in Austin, native. We have women refugees paid a living wage, right, in Austin. All of our cut and sew, right? It's awesome. You won't find it on our website, but it's actually really cool, right? And so that idea of having products that are sustainable, that have a charitable endeavor, are great. Again, it's nothing new, right? So it's worth looking at people that do that really, really well. And so this quote is from Paul Newman, and if you know the picture behind the salad dressings and ingredients that they market, 100% of the net profit from that business goes to philanthropy. 100%. Right? Obviously, there's operating costs and people to pay to produce the product, market the product. But beyond that, 100% of it goes to philanthropy. And over the last 35 years, they've given $550 million. That's an enormous amount of money, right? If anybody here watches college football and you look at the All-State in good hands, All-State in contrast has given about $4.5, maybe $5 million, right, to philanthropy over half the time, but not even close, right? And so there's some really interesting ways that's very real. It doesn't mean that as a business you don't have to be focused on making a profit, but it means that if you're going to include purpose, it should actually be real, right, in terms of what it means. And so we were actually just talking about this randomly. It was about Lego, right? That lots of kids play with Legos, and everybody thinks they're going to be an architect, and that's great. But that the Lego business has done something. It's still family-owned business, right? For as large as that company is, still family-owned. They brought on a new CEO, ex-McKinsey, and as part of that program, their executive bonus structure, less than a third of the payout is based on financial metrics. So most companies, right, 90+%, right, of the payout is based on financial metrics. At Lego, less than a third is. And one of the largest contributors to executive bonus pool is employee satisfaction, not even customer satisfaction. Their theory is that if they have great employees that are highly engaged, that like what they do, they will build innovative products with a great experience, and that will direct the outcome. So to the point of literally paying their executives based on the outcome of how much their employees value and engage with their job. I think it's really interesting, right? Like that's a fundamental tenet of that business. And I believe it affects how successful they are. Because it's Veterans Day, and when USA, member, if you are, shameless endorsement, unpaid, that's a great company. But they did a whole campaign for Veterans Day that, again, makes it personal, right? So statistically, 1 in 20 Americans has done military service. And so it's who's your 1 in 20, right? Who are those people to thank, right? To intentionally thank for their service. And that out of the 20,000 plus USAA employees, right? Most of work in customer service oriented roles. 100% of them go through a 4-day workshop all about customer experience and understanding what it means to serve people who serve. Everybody, right? That's expensive, right? Bottom line, like that's really expensive. But they care so much about the mission and about the experience that their members have that every single person goes through it. So there's no question, right? If you talk to an employee at USAA about what the mission is, their mission is to serve those that serve. Number one, it's not to generate a profit. It's not to produce a dividend. It's to serve the people who serve. And I think that's a really interesting way to look at the world, right? It's not providing shareholder value. It's not producing the biggest dividend. And so back to our Gillette example, they also ran a campaign about Every Hero Sweats, focused on military families, so that as those folks coming from active duty come into the civilian population, what it takes to make that transition, and that, in all fairness, it's not easy, right? Switching jobs, sometimes relocating, dealing with the stresses of normal life can be very real. And so they did a whole campaign on that, the proceeds of which then go to military families and their relatives. And so I think all of that's great as long as it actually also pencils to a profit, right? If you're full nonprofit, different story. But that it actually affects people's behavior. And so, 8 in 10 Americans would actually be more loyal to a purpose-driven brand. And I think that's no more true than today, and that people do actually care, and that affects their behavior. And the other stat that I think is interesting is that it affects their ability to look at other products. And so part of that picture is, how do you cross-merchandise? How do you open your customer up to take on more of your addressable spend? And part of that is they will actually want to from companies that they have a real affinity and or belief in. And so I do believe that the economics do pattern purpose. I don't think they're mutually exclusive, but I think it has to be genuine as opposed to a bolt-on at the bottom of the About Us, not really as interesting as making it part of the story, part of the reason that people actually work with you. And so I believe contemporary commerce is also with purpose. And so in summary, I think that it's about experimental, entrepreneurial experimentation. I believe it's about customer experience, and I believe about doing it with purpose. So thank you.